if we were to take a step back and be less annoyed at the blatant, market manipulation going on, uh, this does paint a very different picture of what crypto will look like in the US than we had before, or like when the SEC actions were announced. Here we go. Welcome back for a special episode. This one is going to be shorter. We're recording ad hoc just to say I told you so. And we'll get into why and what.
which yeah, which we did, but let's just jump right into it. I'm actually gonna like take this one since you actually I think you hit this one on the nose.
So, but for context, this relates to all these SEC actions and like the general difficulty of new businesses in the US to operate in the market. And we originally said, and we may splice some of these quotes in for credibility.
Oh, we definitely are gloating about this one's actually hitting.
Yes, it's whenever you like make a lot of predictions, and then whenever you hit, make a big deal about it. Now, that to me feels like what the SEC is doing is trying to push the crypto business away from the current crop of companies into the hands of the legacy financial institutions. Because that's broadly speaking what would happen, right? If you say that like everybody needs to be a securities marketplace, well, what are the existing securities marketplaces? All legacy financial institutions.
This does match one of my biases, let's say, which is the U.S. no longer being a primarily entrepreneurial country, but being a corporatocracy.
Yeah.
So they may see that this is going to push the entrepreneurial people and the smaller companies elsewhere. They don't really care because, Bank of America or whomever is
They
going to
get their
benefit.
market. And then we had these Binance and Coinbase enforcement actions. And within like a week, the Deutsche Bank announced they're getting into crypto. Citadel, who else was on that
Actually,
one?
it's Charles Schwab, Citadel, and Fidelity.
Yeah, Charles Schwab. That's a really hard name to pronounce. Charles Schwab, Citadel and Fidelity announced they're doing a crypto exchange. They're not even trying to like. It's like so transparent. Like within a week of these actions, they filed to do this stuff. BlackRock Bitcoin ETF. Like it's
Yeah.
insane.
A couple of things there. I mean, they are launching it now. They were talking about it since September of last year, apparently. It is interesting how they're going about it, though, because
You're talking about
first,
the BlackRock ETF or the crypto
no,
exchanges?
no, and the BlackRock ETF seems pretty, straightforward. BlackRock launching ETF. That's it. Having said that, and we can get to the BlackRock thing because I think that was it the BlackRock CEO who was calling Bitcoin an index for money launderer just a few years ago. I'm gonna have to check that one, but I'm pretty sure it was.
I'm pretty sure the latest from BlackRock is the crypto great.
I am pretty sure, but anyway, the interesting thing with this EDX, it's called actually a couple interesting things that I think are close to things that you have said before. One was on a conversation about the ideal exchange. We were theorizing about separating the fiat onboarding and offboarding from the custody, basically, and the trading aspects of things. I understand that that is the case with EDX. They're mostly just going to be facilitating trading. They're not going to take custody of the funds because it is actually geared at enterprises trading with each other. Now, a really interesting thing, which is where we get into the SEC situation being kind of like moral hazard central, is that, yeah, they're just launching now, but coincidentally, they only launch with Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, I think it is, Litecoin, and Ether, which just so happen were named on the lawsuits as specifically securities. So who'd have thought? And it's such a shocker how these things come about.
Oh my lord. It's such like I mean, I get it, right? If I was a big bank and I had regulatory capture in my jurisdiction, why compete? Like competing is messy. You need to execute. What if you can just literally like there's even publicly traded companies doing this, but what if you can just block all of them?
I mean, I gotta say really that if they were doing this just with Bitcoin, you could say like, oh, they're actually going by the statements of Chairman Gensler of everything but Bitcoin as a security, yada yada. So you could at the very least say that they're going based off of public information. But coincidentally launching just with the four that are not on the lawsuits, I mean, good job, guys. Good jobs.
Not to take this in a different direction, but a bit of a tangent. I wonder I wonder whether the people in power in the US happen to primarily be holding Bitcoin and Ether and not so many of the newer things.
Depends on what you mean by people. You mean individuals or large holders?
Individuals, individuals, banks, companies, whatever the people pulling the strings, I wonder how large a percentage of their holdings the ones named in the SEC lawsuit are.
Okay, so you don't mean people, you mean behind the scenes people.
Oh, yeah, right.
Lizard
the,
people. Let's call
the
them that.
others.
Yeah, yeah. So you're wondering about the lizard people investment portfolio.
Indeed, indeed. And how much that colors specific decisions because it does seem to me like the kind of the later to the game you are, the more likely it is that you only have Bitcoin and Ether, right? Where like for the latecomers, Ether is kind of still the exciting new one. I don't know.
True, that's true. However, if the point here is that latecomers are actually, and which is also likely if you're like if you're an elderly lizard person, let's say,
Mm,
chances are you're going to be conservative and then just go with the big established one. But then you wouldn't be necessarily putting the strings for Litecoin and Bitcoin Cash.
that's true, but it's very unclear to me who the hell would be pulling strings for Bitcoin Cash in the first place.
Hey man, who knows? Maybe Roger Ver is a lizard person.
Yeah, I don't know, but so to be clear, like a lot of these companies, they have been around, right? Like Fidelity has been doing a lot of stuff in the blockchain industry for quite a while. Citadel, I think they announced at some point they were going to start doing crypto market making. I remember they in 2022, so last year, or very early last year, they announced that Sequoia and Paradigm had invested in their new thing or them. And so there have been signs of like them doing something in crypto, but certainly if you look at sort of the big picture, like there's no clarity about what to do for startups. Startups do stuff and ask for clarity, still no clarity. Then once it becomes incredibly clear that there's a very big business here, suddenly there's still no clarity but enforcement action. Which then conveniently lets all these old school TradFi institutions just sort of slip in and
Yeah.
start taking market share.
No,
And to be honest, like, this isn't going to lead to TradFi owning crypto in the US. Like, I don't think this is even going to lead to Coinbase like disappearing or anything like that. But it will slow them down. Like, they're going to be bogged down by this for a long time. And all the while, like there will be these new exchanges which can trade everything in like the perfect right way as per what information they're getting from the SEC finally.
particularly if you consider that these are focused on squarely on big business, right? I mean, if you are a retail exchange, you're not going to be having that much volume. Coinbase is clearly way past that. at this point. But what I am curious about is how much of that big boy business this is going to kind of like end up drawing away from them. It'll be an interesting thing to see how the market develops.
I mean, in all honesty, I think it will draw quite a lot. Like right now, if my bank started saying you can trade crypto, I wouldn't do it through them. I would call them and be like, "Do you need some help?" but but I wouldn't do it through them. But I do fully recognize that once that's sort of a norm, most people will prefer to do it. Like, and by most people, I mean like large companies and hedge funds, things like that. If they can do their operations through organizations where they just like don't need to worry about them. Let me rephrase that. Supposedly don't need to worry about them going bust.
Yeah.
But ones that just have
Well,
like this sort of extreme Lindy effect and have been doing it for a long time.
oh, particularly if the non-custodial part of this is properly done. By the way, you
Yeah.
mentioned that Sequoia and Fidelity had, sorry, Sequoia and Paradigm had invested on something that Citadel Fidelity was doing last year. That may actually be this because EDX, because both Sequoia and Paradigm were early backers, I understand.
Yeah, but I think that's separate. So they invested in Citadel Securities. So I think Citadel has like two companies. There's Citadel Securities and Citadel something else, tradings, whatever. And they invested in Citadel Securities, which I don't think is this, but clearly they're doing like stuff together somehow. But yeah, I mean, yeah. The one thing, like if we were to take a step back and be less annoyed at the blatant, market manipulation going on, this does paint a very different picture of what crypto will look like in the US than we had before or like when the SEC actions were announced. Like this is a clear sort of sign that it's not going away. It it may just be constrained to a few organizations who will be allowed to do it, but it's like, here to stay.
For what it's worth, our thesis has never been that crypto is going away from the US. Our thesis has been that crypto startups are likely better served by not being in the US because they seem to have basically a hard on for large companies and nothing else.
Yeah, I think what this does is it just cements this sort of cynical worldview as quite a useful tool for understanding what's going on in the US. Is like, oh, there's something strange happening. Probably someone is fucking someone else. that's that's it.
I mean, expect moral hazard is what I would say. And this is definitely a corporatocratic move. Like, oh, we're just going to protect and help this tree for these large institutions, in spite of, however, we may need to run roughshod over all of these others.
I mean, regulatory capture is an amazing business strategy if you could do it. All right. I think that is it for this short episode. If you prefer us in shorter form, let us know. We might do this more when we do reactions and stuff, but we'll see. Thank you,
Sounds good.
everybody, and goodbye.